and welcome to the third annual celebration of the Filipino American History Month in Georgia. My name is Jane Rowland, and I am the FAM Committee Chair and Board Advisor for Galing Foundation. I am honored to be your host and moderator this afternoon. First of all, I am filled with deep gratitude for your presence today. My heart is warm knowing that we have all come together as a solid community to give tribute to those who have come here before us, who made significant contribution to this great nation we now call home. We celebrate FAM in October for several reasons. First, the earliest documented evidence of Filipino presence in the U.S. occurred in October 18, 1587, when mariners called Luzon Indios under the Spanish command landed in Morro Bay, California. Second, in 1992, the first Filipino American History Month was established by a resolution of the Filipino American Historical Society. Third, in 2009, the U.S. Congress and Senate proclaimed October as a Filipino American History Month. And in 2015 and 2016, President Barack Obama officially recognized October as a Filipino American History Month. Today's symposium is the culmination of a series of six FAM events this year, namely first, the Celebration of Faith, led by Lenny Estacio and Ninette Guerrero. Second, Sariling Tugtugin, Himig at Sayaw, presented by the Film Association of Greater Atlanta, led by Marites Pellicer and Lolit Elliott. Third, Panahon Na Para Magkita, led by Joel Aquino and May Chokshi, which was a tribute to the Georgia Filipino American professionals. Fourth, Pasyalan at Kwentuhan sa Fernbank, a walking tour and storytelling led by Maria Isabel Thompson of Galing Foundation. Fifth, Panagderia Chronicles, presented by PACGA led by Anne-Marie Logarda. And today's Together We Thrive Symposium by Galing Foundation. I am deeply grateful to the leads of each event for their hard work and dedication. These six events, all under the Filipino community umbrella, led by different groups of leaders, is a symbol of Filipino unity and flexibility. It gives me so much pride to know that no matter how diverse we are in so many ways, we can come together and unite as one Filipino to honor our culture, heritage, and our history as settlers in this great country. This is a perfect reflection of this year's theme, Together We Thrive. In 2019, when Galing Foundation initiated this project, we successfully conducted the symposium face-to-face. In 2020, however, the COVID-19 pandemic precluded us from holding the symposium face-to-face. This year, we were fervently hoping for a face-to-face celebration which was going to be held at the Metro South Association of Realtors in Morro, Georgia. But then again, we are not out of the COVID woods yet. So in the abundance of caution, we are holding the symposium virtually. I mentioned Morro, Georgia because that is the reason why you will hear our welcome remarks from the mayor of Morro, Mayor John Lample, because we were supposed to hold the symposium in Morro. But then again, it still gives me so much pride that we were still able to mobilize the whole Filipino community in Georgia to celebrate as one. Indeed, together we thrive. Today we will highlight our early Georgia settlers, their immigration stories, challenges, and resiliency, and their call of challenge to our youth. We will hear a very inspiring keynote address from the first Filipino judge in Georgia, Her Honor Chief Magistrate Judge Riza O'Connor. And we will have the pleasure of listening to and participating in a mini town hall meeting by our first Filipino Georgia State Representative, Marvin Lim. I am also excited to hear the young generation Filipinos, our future leaders. Getting our younger generation engaged in our history, current events, and knowing their vision will ensure that Filipino-American history will continue in the years to come. This is every Georgia Filipino leader's dream, and we can only achieve this if we are united, because together we thrive. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our Makabayan singers to deliver our national anthems, the Star-Spangled Banner and Lupang Hinirang. They will be followed by the welcome remarks from John Lampol, the Mayor of City of Moro, a welcome remarks from our Philippine Honorary Consul General in Atlanta, Raul Ray Donato, a message from our Philippine Ambassador to the United States, Jose Manuel Romualdez, and the proclamation by our Georgia State Representative, Marvin C. Lim. So, sit back and enjoy, and thank you.
Oh, say, can you see why the dawn's early light was so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that Star-Spangled Banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the Bayang magiliw, perlas ng silanganan, hanap ng puso, sa dibdib mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, duyang ka ng magiting, sa manlulupi, di ka pasisingil, sa dagat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit mong bughaw, may dilakang tula at awit sa paglayang minamahal. Ang kisap ng matawat mo'y tagumpay na nanginging, ang bituin at araw niya kailan pang may di magdidilim. Lupa ng araw ng aking pagsinta, buhay ay langit sa piling mo. Aming ligaya na pag may pang-api, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Hello, my name is John Lampol, and I'm the mayor of the City of Moro. And it is with great pleasure that the City of Moro recognizes the Filipino American community for their service and enhancement of our communities. For over 400 years, the Filipino community has worked tirelessly to make America a better place. Countless stories of Filipinos working to raise their families and being dedicated citizens of this great country. The City of Morrow celebrates October as Filipino American History Month, where we recognize the significant role Filipinos have played in American history, and our local community as well. For each victory that has been earned by the Asian community, we must remember those in the Filipino community that cleared the path to allow access to higher education, capital markets for independent businesses, and the pursuit of the American dream. Their sacrifices have not been forgotten. They have become the foundation of something much greater, the backbone of the future for all of mankind. The Filipino community has made history many times. From World War II to Iraq, men and women have given their lives to protect our great country. Those past efforts are beginning to be recognized as well. Congress has asked the Navy to name a new ship after Telesero Trinidad, a Filipino-American sailor who received the Medal of Honor in 1915. Trinidad, who saved his crew members after boiler explosions aboard the armored cruiser USS San Diego, is the only Filipino-American and the only Asian-American sailor to receive the Medal of Honor. A future USS Telesfero Trinidad would become the first warship named after an American of Filipino descent. The stories we read our children about your community grow each year. In fact, Marvel Comics has just added Filipino-American Ari Abagayani as Marvel's newest addition to its growing list of heroes. Your community now stands beside Captain America and Superman as legendary fighters for justice. That shouldn't be a surprise. Your community has fought for justice for a long time. From farm workers, healthcare professionals, educators, lawyers, and students, each generation more courageous and better off than the last. However, no story is more personal than your own. Morrow's Filipino Americans continue to lead this community as they focus on a greater tomorrow, a place where they long ago earned a seat at the table, a place where their culture is appreciated and they are a valued member of our community. As October begins, we sincerely thank each of you for your valued time and commitment to making Morrow a fantastic place to raise your family, operate your business, and gain an excellent education. Our future has no limits, and with the grace of God, we can collectively earn our place in history, one that will impress our ancestors, so that when we meet them again, they will applaud our use of our time that we were given here. Thank you again for all the Filipino American community does for Morrow and this nation. We are forever grateful. Thank you.
Greetings to everyone. October of each year, we celebrate the Filipino American History Month as proclaimed by Georgia Governor Brian Kemp and the United States Congress. It was apropos that such a month was set aside to honor the historical events of Filipino Americans all over the United States, especially here in Georgia. As such, we want to remember and congratulate our individual kababayans, our various associations and community leaders for their immeasurable contributions that they have done in promoting our Filipino heritage, customs, and traditions. We also honor and thank all of those who have individually contributed their time, financial resources, and volunteer work in their advocacy of strengthening our resolve to do good for our community. 2020, the year of the COVID-19 pandemic, has been an extremely challenging year, and we are particularly thankful to our Philam healthcare workers and all frontliners to their courageous efforts and individual self-sacrifice for a higher good. As this deadly pandemic continues to ravage us, we commend them highly and we call them our heroes. Particularly, our various Philam associations here in Georgia have been the pillars of strength in our unified community. As the Philippine Honorary Consul General in Atlanta, I am pleased to join in this celebration in recognizing our Filipino Americans who have enriched our society. Mabuhay po sa inyong lahat. Thank you and have a wonderful day today.
I wish to convey the Philippine Embassy's warmest greetings to Galing Foundation Incorporated and the Filipino-American community in Atlanta, Georgia, on the occasion of the Filipino-American History Month. This year's commemoration of the Filipino-American History Month is made more meaningful with our celebration of the 75th anniversary celebration of Philippine-U.S. relations. It has been 434 years since the first recorded Filipino arrival in the United States. And since then, our forebears had to overcome marginalization and discrimination to ensure that our community's crucial role in the nation building of the United States is recognized and valued. I therefore laud your celebration of Filipino-American History Month and encourage you to ensure that our community, especially the younger generations of Filipino Americans, understand and appreciate the story of how our community came to be where it is today. The pandemic has caused significant hardships and disruptions in our community, but it has also highlighted the vital contributions of Filipino frontliners in various fields to national efforts at addressing the scourge, both here in the United States and in the Philippines. I was deeply moved by the efforts of the community to help one another and to extend assistance to the Philippines. Today, I reiterate and continue the call for unity, not only among the Filipino communities in Georgia, but between the Filipino and American people there as we work towards our shared goal in these difficult times. As we recover from the pandemic, I am confident that our Bayanihan spirit and deeply rooted culture and traditions will continue to strengthen our resolve to overcome the challenges we face today. I thank our friends at the Galing Foundation, whom I know will remain a steadfast partner of the Philippine Embassy and the Filipino-American community in reinforcing our close people-to-people ties, as well as nation-building efforts for the benefit of Georgia, the United States, and most of all, the Philippines. I wish you all a meaningful Filipino-American History Month celebration. Maraming salamat at mabuhay po kayong lahat.
Hello, everyone. I am pleased to read the governor's proclamation of this month as Filipino-American History Month. By the governor of the state of Georgia, a proclamation, Filipino-American History Month. Whereas Filipino Americans make up one of the largest Asian American ethnic groups in the United States today, and whereas the earliest documented evidence of Filipinos in the continental United States occurred in October 18th, 1587, when mariners called Luzones Indios under Spanish command landed in Morro Bay, California. And whereas the month of October is an appropriate time to promote and reflect on Philippine history and culture, to provide all Americans with the opportunity to hear about and appreciate the contributions of Filipino Americans. And whereas the contributions of Filipino Americans have enhanced the freedom, prosperity, and greatness that America continues to enjoy today, and the customs and traditions of Filipino Americans are respected and celebrated as part of the rich history of our state and the nation. And whereas during World War II, more than 260,000 Filipino and Filipino American soldiers answered the call to action and bravely served and sacrificed under the American flag. The Filipino Veterans of World War II Congressional Gold Medal Act unanimously passed through Congress and was signed into law in December of 2016. And whereas it is necessary to instill in our youth the importance of education, history, and ethnicity in creating eminent role models, establishing proud cultural identities, and producing exceptional citizens of this nation, now therefore, I, Brian Kemp, Governor of the state of Georgia, do hereby proclaim October 2021 as Filipino American History Month in Georgia. In witness thereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the Executive Department to be affixed this 19th day of July in the year of our Lord 2021. Signed, Governor Brown.
Mabuhay mga kababayan. Greetings to all our friends. My name is Tony Dialutgers, and I'm the Executive Director of Galing Foundation Incorporated. Our mission is to serve as partner in building a legacy of hope by transforming the new generation through the power of literacy and education and by sharing God's love to all. On behalf of the GFI board and its partners, we hope that you have enjoyed one or all of the events offered by the FAHM 2021 Planning Committee. We hope that you've gained a better understanding and renewed appreciation of our rich history, traditions, and culture. We hope that you've gained more friends and built more relationship in the Filipino American community in Georgia. Still, there are more to come. This afternoon, it is my great honor and privilege to present to you the first Filipino American judge in Georgia. Growing up, she was nurtured and supported by a tight-knit Filipino American community in Savannah. To this day, those ties are blessed and stronger than ever. It's so amazing to realize the power of community and thus producing exemplary citizen, people of service, serving a greater good, instilling in its members the value of faith, education, discipline, and service to others, just to name a few. Our keynote speaker served as the first Asian American and the 72nd president of the Young Lawyers Division of the State Bar of Georgia. She was named into the 2018 Georgia Asian Times list of 25 most influential Asian Americans in Georgia and was recognized as a rising star by the Daily Report in 2019. Let's learn from someone who has a proven track record on servant leadership, a person whom all could learn from, whose career continues to ascend by giving back to the community she loves. Please welcome the Chief Magistrate Judge of Toombs County, Georgia, the Honorable Judge Riza O'Connor.
Hello everyone, happy Filipino American History Month from South Georgia in the sweet onion city of Vidalia. My name is Judge Riza Palmares O'Connor, and I'm honored to have been the first Filipino American judge in Georgia, a position that I've held for the past 8 years. It is a joy to be a part of this symposium, and I applaud all of you on your success and continued service to the Filipino communities in the Philippines and in Georgia. I am so impressed by your organization's efforts to empower students and give them the education needed through the power of books and knowledge. As a first-generation Filipino American myself, I understand the value of being given an opportunity and the power of education because it was once given to me as a child by so many selfless people like those here in this organization. I did not come from a family of wealth or from a family of lawyers. My mom, who was from Cabancalan, Negros Occidental, grew up with 10 brothers and sisters and came from a family of teachers and farmers. She became a nurse for the sole reason of being able to provide a better life for her future family in America. And she and my father, who was from Marble, South Cotabato, met at a sugar refinery plant in Cabancalan. And they kept a long-distance relationship for several years while my mom accepted an offer as a nurse in all places in the United States to be Statesboro, Georgia. After my parents married, they moved to Savannah, Georgia, where I was born shortly after. And my parents became friends with other Filipino nurses and their families, and they formed this core group, very tight-knit group of about 30 people in Savannah in the early 1980s. This core group of Filipinos are still together. They call themselves the Oldies because in the mid-1980s, they were some of the first few Filipinos that were living in Savannah. And along with my parents, it was this core group of Filipinos in Savannah who raised me, encouraged me, and aside from God, education was very important. And my parents sacrificed in those early years most of their extra income to send me to private school, knowing that doors would open up with a strong education. And we didn't have a lot at that time. My father, who was an accountant in the Philippines, had to work odd-end jobs here in America. At one point, he worked at a gas station, and another time, he mixed ingredients at a local bakery. But my parents got through it, and without any family in this country, they leaned to other people for support. And I credit the Filipinos in Savannah for being our family. I had many different titos and titas that babysat me while my parents at work. And they encouraged me, and they read to me, and they took me to the library, and the library became my favorite place. Books and literacy were the window of life and enrichment to me at an early age. And that is why I'm so thankful for this foundation and what it does of providing books and school supplies to children, because that is so valuable. Knowledge and literacy are the foundation for future successes and future opportunities. And as I grew older, it was that application of that education that later became more important. What drove me in working hard towards professional goals and being a good citizen and being a leader was the story and sacrifice of my parents and those titos and titas that raised me. Their sacrifice to come to America, to leave their families, to overcome challenges, to adjust to a different culture and diverse people, and sometimes just to build a life was absolutely incredible. And through this all, they encouraged me through the love of books to keep striving for whatever goals I had in mind. And as I've gotten older, I see that it is my Filipino heritage and my Filipino values that have had the most influence in who I am today. I am stronger because of that example that the past Filipino mentors have set for me. As a judge, as a wife, and as a mother, I believe and I have seen that your identity and your heritage matter. It tells you who we are, and it tells you where we are going. And I feel that inside of me and know that there are many traits that are inherently Filipino that make us stand apart from anyone else. Filipinos are tough, we're resilient, we are hard workers. We have endured world wars, typhoons, earthquakes, and poverty. And we have to remember that as Filipinos, we bounce back from adversity. Where burdens have caused us to be weighed heavily, Filipinos hold tight to faith, family, and have that inner strength to keep going. Filipinos have that tough mentality that is so important, that is so different from anyone else. So that is why I think that where we are going as Filipinos in Georgia is up. We have what it takes to lead and succeed, and we will continue to grow in our representation, our leadership, and our influence. According to the last census, Asians in the United States have tripled in the past 3 decades. Asians are the fastest growing ethnic and racial group, and among those, Filipinos are doing incredibly well. To give you an example, in a recent article published by the New York Times this past August, it showed that Filipinos currently have a median household income of $95,000, compared to in 2004 under the United States Census Bureau, which showed that the median household income for Filipinos was $65,000. That is a huge growth in just 16 years. Today, 13% of Filipino households have an income over $200,000. 66% of Filipinos own their own home, and 51% hold college degrees. In Georgia, in the 2020 census, the Asian population has surged and has jumped by 53%. And the Filipino population now in Georgia is over 20,000. With our increased growth, we deserve a seat at the table. If we do not take those opportunities to lead, someone else will. We have already many strong Filipino leaders who have put themselves out there and who have answered the calling. To name a few, Jane Rowland is the current president of the Philippine American Chamber of Commerce in Georgia and was recently selected to the executive committee of the Coalition of Philippine American Chambers of Commerce. Attorney Brian Ramos here in Georgia was recently nominated as the Outstanding Filipinos in America Award and was recently asked by General Toby Taguba to serve as legal contributor to the Repeal Acts Coalition, a national effort drafting legislation for the repeal of the 1946 Rescission Act that denied Filipino veterans their benefits after World War II. Many others continue to serve on boards in this state and highly recognized organizations such as the Asian Americans Advancing Justice, the National Asian Pacific American Bar Association, and the Georgia Advisory of the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights. And our growth as a people has become more visible in this past election cycle. A respectful number of Filipinos have become American citizens and registered to vote. The political parties recognize this fact by creating a disaggregated voting list of Fil-Am voters for the very first time. And we have many active Filipinos in local government. One example is Arjo Turner, who is very active in Cobb County government and is skilled in community organizing. And in 2021, Marvin Lin made history and took office as the first Filipino elected as a state representative to the Georgia House. I believe that the reason that the Filipino community in Georgia continues to strive is because it has remained a unified and supportive body. Like that original group in Savannah of Filipinos in the mid-1980s who have held tightly to its support and encouragement of one another, so have many Filipino groups across the state. As the Filipino population has grown, these organizations have adapted and stayed united for so many years, such as the Filipino American Association of Greater Atlanta, founded in 1973, the Filipino American Association of Northeast Georgia, founded in 1987, the Fil-Am Coastal Georgia Association, founded in 1983, and even one in Vidalia, the USA Mabuhay Association, founded in 1998. And many others continue to serve and make a difference in our communities. They provide strong, positive outputs that are greater because they do it as a collective group to provide social and community service opportunities for its members and mentorships and scholarships for its students. Wow. And I believe that the Filipino community will always be just that, a community. A group of people who care deeply about each other, who encourage each other, who work closely together to make life better, and who create opportunities for Filipinos here and in the Philippines. Filipinos have been and will always be some of the most kindest, most generous, most resilient, and positive people. That is why I know that this community will always be uplifting and continue to build each other up and look out for the best interests of Filipinos now and in the future. And lastly, there is always a seat at the table for us. We have strong leaders now. I've mentioned a few, but there is always room for more Filipino leaders in the future. As current leaders, we need to continue to give, make, and provide opportunities for others to lead. As Filipinos, we have a strong voice, we have a valuable voice, and our representation matters. Let's continue to let our light shine and grow as it has always done. Thank you so much. Stay safe, God bless, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you so much to Mayor Lampo, Consul General Ray Donato, Ambassador Romualdez, Marvin Lim, and thank you so much, Judge Riza O'Connor, for this very inspiring message. That's why you're a judge. You did your research, you know everybody. So at this point, we would like to move on with our panel discussion, and I would like to introduce our panelists who are our early settlers in Georgia. And we do have Dr. Eligio Abeliara and Dr. Manolo Apanay from our medical field, and Reverend Father Giosmar Natad on our faith. So, gentlemen, you may start talking about your immigration stories, and after each of you deliver your stories, then we will open it up for questions and answers from the audience.
All right, Manolo Apanay is my name. Just listening to the previous speakers, we've really come a long way. When I first came here in 1963, there were only 4 Filipinos that I knew of in Atlanta. I came under the exchange J1 visa and born in Rizal, Visayas. I graduated in 1963. The same year, I came to Atlanta to pursue my training in surgery, general surgery, at Crawford W. Long Memorial Hospital of Emory University. I think they call it now Midtown, Emory University, Midtown. My life was very limited, of course, when I came here because I was in a hospital 24 hours a day, and sometimes I would have weekends off. So my world was very, very limited. Like I said, there were only 4 Filipinos that I knew of, and they were mostly doctors. One who was employed by Crawford Long Hospital as a med technician. During that time, of course, Atlanta was a very, very small city. I thought I was coming to a city like New York, but Atlanta was a very small southern city. There was a very small population, and definitely there were not very many Asians either. So as a matter of fact, there was only one Chinese restaurant in Atlanta. It was not until my patients, by the way, were mostly whites, because at that time the black patients were in another hospital and they had their own hospital. So I only took care of white patients. But being a Filipino, I really didn't. I thought it was kind of challenging, although I didn't feel like I was being discriminated because I worked in a white hospital and they kind of respected me, maybe because of my profession. I was good with some of the nurses there. As a matter of fact, I dated white nurses, and I ended up marrying a blue-eyed blonde. So I felt like I was not discriminated. It was not until 1968, I think, when the hospital started desegregation. They started integrating, and we had our first black patient sometime in 1968. So my experience was challenging, but was not. I felt no discrimination. Only when you're Filipino here, so you go ride the bus, and during that time, the white people stayed in the front of the bus, and the black in the back. So I stayed in the middle just to be on the safe side. Also, during that time, there were black restrooms and white restrooms. I worked at Grady Hospital, and they had a black emergency room and a white emergency room. And so definitely there was segregation, although being a Filipino, I didn't really feel very discriminated. So to me, it was challenging, but very pleasant. Okay.
Thank you po, Doc. And we shall now hear from Dr. Abeliara. Doc?
I'm ready. Magandang hapon po. Good afternoon. My name is Eligio Abeliara, Eli for short. First, I would like to extend my sincere appreciation and profound thanks to the organizers of this forum, in particular to you, Ms. Jane Rowland, and to Ms. Tony Daya for asking me once again to be part of it. Needless to say, I'm extremely delighted. In the first forum, I referred to the first wave of Filipinos who came to Atlanta in the early 60s. Now, there may have been others prior, but what I related was my own recollections of what I've seen and experienced in real time. I came here 1 year after my friend Manolo came to the United States. He came here in 1963. I came in 1964 in Illinois, in a city called Peoria. And I later moved to Atlanta in 1967. Atlanta in the early 60s was completely different. It was going through rough change politically as the civil rights movement was winding down. There were still signs in restaurants, in restrooms, in drinking fountains, and other public places with remnants of segregation. Signs like for whites only. Many of us have struggled with assimilation in some form or another. There are stories we don't like to share or might as soon forget about the discrimination we've faced and the struggles we've gone through, perhaps out of embarrassment. These are not isolated incidents and individual experiences. These are the result of a society with fear and racism ingrained in its structure. But we have been slowly breaking them, and we must continue to do so. Unfortunately, there has been resurgence of hate directed against immigrants, fueled by the political climate of division. But this should not deter us from living our lives to the fullest by trying to be successful in any endeavor we choose. The road may not be as smooth, but we can learn to take advantage of our being multidimensional and multidisciplinary, because that's what we are, multidisciplinary and multidimensional. We are all immigrants or descendants of immigrants. We came to this country in search of new opportunities, of a better tomorrow. Just as the first Filipinos who came here in 1587, so are we. We all came with the same purpose. So sit back and relax. We hope we can enlighten and share with you with some of the things we went through to get to where we are. Maraming salamat po. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doc. That was very inspiring. Now we will listen to Father Josmar Natad. Father?
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I'm very, very honored to be part of this great Filipino event, this symposium, virtual symposium, and thank you for inviting me for the first time, Jane and Tony. I'm very, very happy that I can be able to participate. And as you mentioned, my name is Reverend Father Josmar Natad. I am currently the pastor here at Good Shepherd in Cumming, Georgia. And I was the first Filipino being ordained priest in the Archdiocese of Atlanta. I was ordained way back in June 5th, 2004 at the Cathedral of Christ the King in downtown. So I came here in the US, not that long, but way back in 2001. So I started my education in the Philippines. So I earned my Bachelor of Science in Chemical Engineering degree from a Catholic university in Cebu, Philippines. And then when I entered the seminary, I finished my associate degree in philosophy in Christ the King Seminary in New Manila, Philippines. And I earned my graduate degree in theology from Mary Hill School of Theology in New Manila, Philippines. And I earned my Master of Divinity degree in May 2003 from Mount St. Mary Seminary in Emmitsburg, Maryland, USA. So I've been assigned to different parishes here in their diocese. And I'm so blessed as well to be able to immerse myself to different communities, and especially as well the culture here in the US. So I was the parochial vicar at Holy Trinity Catholic Church in Peachtree City. And then I moved to St. Peter Chanel Catholic Church in Roswell, Georgia. And then moved to St. Bridget Catholic Church in Johns Creek. And after that, I became the director and chaplain at Emory University in downtown Atlanta, while I take care of all the students there. And then I became also the master of ceremony of Cardinal Wilton Gregory, who is now assigned in Washington, D.C. So struggles being the first Filipino being ordained here, they're not really familiar about our culture. For some who have not been encountered any Filipinos, I remember my first time when I was the chaplain at Emory University. I was the first minority being the director there, and I have staff. And of course, it's challenging because they're not used to have a minority to be their boss or to be called the leader of that institution. So there's a lot of adjustment that I have to make. And of course, there's a clash of our culture as Filipino and their culture as well. So that was the first. And then when I became the pastor at St. Mary's Catholic Church down the south, I was as well the first Filipino or even minority that became a pastor there. And it was very challenging because most of them, they were never exposed to any other culture except me as the first minority and Filipino, and they couldn't even pronounce my name because it's so hard for them, to be able to understand or how to pronounce my name. But I thrive. I'll try my best, to be able to serve these wonderful people. And I gradually introduced our Filipino culture, and it ended up to be a wonderful experiences, both of me and for them as well, that they now realize that the Filipino culture is a wonderful culture, and they appreciated that one. And then when I moved here at Good Shepherd in Cumming, Georgia, as usual, I was the first minority and the first Filipino in particular to be the pastor in the big parish. And so they have said before, people are talking, who is the next pastor? Is the next pastor? And they could not pronounce my name. And they asked, where is he from? Does he know how to speak English? Can he understand us? So those are the struggles. In fact, there were some people that maybe, since they are not familiar with minority, to be the leading pastor. And I have staff here as well. Most of them are white people, and I have 25 of them. Some could easily be working with, but some, they have kind of like hesitant because this is their first time to have a boss or in charge that is a minority and particularly Filipino. So every now and then there are some maybe doubts from other culture. Why is it that we have a Filipino pastor here at Good Shepherd? But I'm working on it. I'm doing the same thing what I did in my previous parish, to trying to educate them, to trying to let them inform that as a children of God in one faith, we are the same. We're all equal. We're all loved by God. So those are just the short, summary of my experiences here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Father. And thank you, guys. We shall now open the floor to questions from the audience. And I'd like to note and point out to everyone that we have about 10 minutes to do the questions and answers. And if we don't cover all your questions, please feel free to send them via email to us, and we will ask the panelists to respond, and we will post your answers to the GFI Facebook page or Atlanta Pinoy with their permission. So the floor is now open for anybody who wants to ask a question, please. You can either raise your hand in the chat or you can go ahead and speak, unmute yourself and go ahead and ask your question.
Before your question, let me just add something about my experience in the early 60s. When I first came, they didn't even know where the Philippines was. They were wondering probably which planet I came from. I don't look like them. I don't look like the blacks. So they were wondering, where I came from. A lot of the young people during that time did not know where the Philippines was. Only probably the elderly who were already on during the Second World War knew what the Philippines was, but the young generation at that time did not know what the Philippines was. And also in Georgia, during those early times, they did not allow interracial marriage. But I guess I was just lucky because I got a license and I married a white one. So overall, in Atlanta was a very, very southern city. It's a small city, and definitely there was segregation. There's no question about that. But being Asian, I did not see a lot of segregation. Maybe there was, but I was allowed to go, to restaurants. I went to different places, and they were just asking, where I came from most of the time. And but I was never. As far as I'm concerned, I was never discriminated going to the restaurants and all those things. And people working in the hospital were very respected. We were very respected, as Dr. Aguilera can tell you. They treated us as doctors who were there, maybe because of our profession. Outside of our profession, I don't know what, experience they had. But as far as I'm concerned, my experience was, like I said, challenging, but, okay.
On that note, also, in the early part here in Atlanta, when they see an Oriental, they think he's Chinese.
But there were not very many Chinese people here either during that time.
Well, as the Hollywood artists say, that after a few years, everybody in the world would look like Filipinos. There's so much fusion. But anyway, Doc, we have a question from. Before I go to that, I would like to let the audience know that you cannot unmute yourself apparently. So if you have any questions, please raise your hand on the chat box or just write your questions in the chat box. In the meantime, we do have a question from Arjo. Arjo, go ahead.
Magandang hapon po, Dr. Panay, Dr. Biliera, Father Natad. I think this question of interest is particularly for Dr. Panay and Dr. Biliera, because you came in here in a different kind of like era, and so you've noticed and you have stressed really at that point what's the social state of the country, and specifically the state of Georgia being a southern state. My question is that, what will be your message to the kids of the Filipino Americans who are born here, and then the value of learning Filipino American history? Because we are starting this conversation and discussion, but the ones that will sustain this history, that the wealth of knowledge that you are sharing now, will be our next generations. What will be your message to each of them? Then I will ask a message later for Father Nathan with respect to the religious group naman.
Okay. Our experience, Dr. Blair and I came here like in the early 60s, right? And we have children. My children are Filipino Americans having a white wife. But our children grew up knowing the Filipino culture. They attended, when we formed the Filipino American Association of Greater Atlanta in '74, there were only like 60, I think, families, right? But as our children grew up, they all participated in all the Filipino American gatherings and affairs. They all know about the Filipino culture. They eat Filipino food, and my wife cooks Filipino food. She learned all this during the 50 years of our marriage. So our children are brought up knowing the Filipino culture. And I'm sure Tony can tell you that because I'm sure she's met some of our children. Ellie?
Message to the young children, Filipino American children, is to know your history about the Philippines and try to be inspired and determined about making positive changes. Yes, we can is a slogan that was promulgated in the previous administration, but be realistic about it too, about what you can and cannot change. You can steer the boat, but you cannot change the river. So a good metaphor with that is when you go river rafting and complain about the flow of the river or constantly want to make the river change, then you'll not enjoy rafting. So you need to adapt to the situation, and that's what we did. We adapted to the situation regardless of what the odds that we went through. Dr. Apanay made mention about he didn't have any issues. I did have some issues. There were some burnt crust in the first house that we moved into, and raw eggs were thrown at my front door in the same residence, the first house that we own. So we have all different experiences, but the younger generation, they don't. You can make changes, and as I said, know your history.
Thank you, po, Doc. We have a question from the chat group. As a minority doctor during your times, how difficult was it to get the trust of the patients?
Unfortunately, fortunately for me, I didn't have any issues. Maybe one or two throughout the entire practice that I have. That
Yes, me too. When we were in training, being the white hospital that we were trained in, like I said, all the patients were white, but they respected us. They treated us as doctors and all that. And then after my training, of course, I was drafted in the army, so I spent 1 year in Vietnam, and that experience also was good for me. But after that, I came back. I opened my practice. Dr. Abilera knows that too, because we practiced in the same area, and we did not feel discriminated. We had white patients, of course, and black patients, and Latino patients, and all that. So, as far as us being discriminated as doctors, they came to us. We had a lot of white patients, and of course, all sorts of patients. So. In at least where we practice, it is the southern part of Atlanta. South Atlanta is Clayton County and Henry County. Of course, they were not. They were not all white doctors there either. There were also some Latino doctors and Asian doctors and Indian doctors. So our experience in the late 70s and 80s are probably different if we started practicing in the early 60s, because there were no other doctors here except white doctors practicing in the city during that time. So it's different in the late
Thank
80s.
you, Doc. Thank you. Well, Filipino workers, whether in the medical field, educational field, business field, we are known for our work ethics and our knowledge, skills, and abilities. But I will also throw in there the Filipino charm. That's why you get a lot of trust immediately. So there was a question for Father Nathan. The question was, what was the first reaction or the reaction of the Phil-Ams in your parish when they first saw you?
Oh, very grateful about them. Yeah.
When they first met you for the first time, what were the common reactions?
They're actually very happy And they are actually very excited. When I got ordained, I had a lot of Filipinos attended my ordination. And in fact, I never met most of them, but they were just very happy that that we have a first Filipino being ordained. The fact that most Filipinos are Catholics, and they're just so happy that there is a Filipino priest that could be able to cater the religious traditions that we have as Filipinos, because I believe that it's very important. As we all know, faith is one of the most valued traditions in our country. And I think I mentioned it before that most of our Filipino events in the Philippines always related to our faith. Every month, or every now and then, we have a lot of fiestas. It's all about the faith. We have the different festivals, which also pretty much about faith, the Sinulog and Nazareno, and different kinds of religious traditions that we have. And now they're very happy because we can be able to celebrate that one. Like, for example, here in my parish, we are having a monthly Filipino Mass. And then we as well celebrate the different traditions, religious traditions, like the Simbang Gabi, as well the Santa Cruzan, and All Souls Day, All Saints Day. So those are the things that the Filipinos are excited, so we can be able to practice them here in our place, especially different parishes.
Anyway, this is a question the three of you to wrap things up. Knowing what you know now, what could have you done differently? And what are your parting words for the future generation of this community?
For me to start?
Yes, go ahead.
We are very in an interesting time in American history, with our society increasingly polarized and unable to meet in the middle. It's important for us to work together across social functions, factions, or groups, regional, racial, religious, and political lines. This applies to us at all local levels as well as in the national level. After all, just as the theme of this webinar, we are bound by our common goal of togetherness as Filipinos in our adopted land. For it is through togetherness that we can accomplish the things that we seek to accomplish, big or small. So together we should go.
Together we thrive. Thank you, po. Dr. Apanay?
Yes, I think at this time, I would like to really congratulate you and the other, and Tony and the other leaders of the different Filipino-American groups in Atlanta and Georgia, because I think their goal is being done. Whatever their goal is they're trying to do the goal. So if they keep on doing what they're doing, I think we have a good future here. Thank you.
Thank you, po. Father Natad?
Oh, yes, I'm very, very happy as well that we have this different kind of Filipino events that really put us together, that really help each other and support one another. And I think we just have to continue to do this kind of activities and events that are able to bring us together as one community, as what we have known recently, that there's a lot, whether we like it or not, there's a lot of unfortunate situations that are happening in our country. Maybe a racial discrimination, a lot of division and disunity. And I think as a Filipino community, we can start that with our own community. I know we have different languages in the Philippines, from Tagalog, Bisaya, or Ilonggo, whatever it is. But I think we should start to accept one another and support each other. And I would like as well to encourage, especially the new immigrants, parents who are just coming here in our country here in the US, to continue to inculcate the Filipino values to their children. I have been meeting a lot of new immigrants, Filipinos, and as well been here for many, many years. And I've noticed that some of them, they inculcate, the values and the traditions of our country in the Philippines. But there are some as well who forgot who we are. They don't even teach the language to their children, and they cannot even understand our own language as Tagalog or Bisaya or Ilonggo, whatever it is. And as well, they forgot as well to tell them, to appreciate our culture as Filipinos, all those beautiful traditions that we have. And I would suggest that we will help them and we support each other, to continue to be proud of our culture, to continue to inculcate our young generation. Because if they don't do that one, who will continue our culture? Who will continue to practice our beautiful traditions in the Philippines? And who will continue to speak our language here? So I would like to really encourage to do some more activities and events like this that would expose the younger generation to know more who we are as Filipinos. Thank you.
Maraming salamat po. Thank you po, Father. That's exactly what FAM is all about, and that was our dream. And when we started this in 2019, my vision then was to, of course, to embrace our past, to give thanks to the past, but also engage our youth.
Yes.
To look forward to the future, because they are our future. And that has always been the theme of our FAM celebrations, including our other community celebration. And it is, like I said earlier, it warms my heart that FAM celebrations has been widely embraced by the whole community, and it's growing and it continues to grow. My dream for the next years is that the panelists alone should have more time, because 2 hours is not really enough time for everything that we want to do. So hopefully when we grow, as we grow in the next few years, then we will have more time to discuss the past, the challenges, the resiliency, what you did, what would you have done differently, and all those things that we cannot discuss in the span of 15 minutes. So we hope to see you again in the future, in the future celebrations of FAM. So with that said, I really, really thank you, gentlemen, for being in the panel, and we know that we need to hear more from you.
Greetings mga kababayan. Once again, we in Makabayan, Georgia are proud to support Galing Foundation and the Filipino community in Georgia in the celebration of Filipino American History Month, FAHM. To recognize the early settlers, their history and contributions, as well as to recognize the Filipino Americans whose efforts and contributions through the years continue to make our communities grow strong and make us proud as a people. We are happy to have helped make this celebration now a tradition in Georgia. While remembering our humble beginnings, we continue to promote our Filipino cultural identity for our children and generations to come reliving our customs and traditions on every occasion in our everyday lives. Makabayan is honored to participate in this momentous and auspicious occasion this year, 2021. A Filipino-American foundation in Georgia since 2008, Makabayan has been inspiring, motivating, and empowering Filipino-Americans in our communities to work together to make a difference in the lives of people in Georgia, in the USA, and the Philippines. With support from all of you, together we serve our community. Mabuhay!
Magmula nang ako'y natutong bumawi, naging makulay ang aking munting daigdig. Tila hilot pala ang pag-ibig, kung mga nagdamay pag-ibig, kung umabang tayong magtinig, ay sadyang nanginginig. Magmula nang ako'y natutong bumawi, sandali aking pilit pawatin ang himig na may tuturing ating mapupuri makapagkakami. Di marami ang di magsasabi, ito na ikaw din. Ay
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to be able to moderate our esteemed panelists today, our town hall with Representative Marvin Lim. It's so great to see faces on the screen and names as well in the participant list. And so thank you so much for joining, and this should be a great conversation. So what I'd like to do is start off with just a few housekeeping rules. And just to give you a feel for the flow of how the town hall will go. So I'll do a quick intro and I will share Marvin with this audience. He'll share a little bit more about himself, and then we'll have about 15 minutes for Q&A. So at that time, I'll pause to take questions from the chat. So please go ahead and type in your question. And if there are no questions, I will facilitate some questions that have already been previously submitted. So with that, let's get into it. Marvin, hello and welcome. I know this audience knows you very well since you served as a keynote speaker for us in the past, and you're a friend of the community. However, I'm sure there are a few folks here who may not know you as well, and you have a fascinating background that is definitely worth sharing. You moved to the U.S. at the age of 7 and had some hardships along the way, but you were able to get to where you are now today. Would you mind sharing just a little bit of your story so that the audience can get to know you a bit better?
Yeah, absolutely, Christina. And I will share my story at the same time, sort of give what I hope to see out of this town hall. First of all, thank you so much for having me. So since this is a town hall off the bat, I want to say my primary goal is not to speak for the Filipino American perspective here in Georgia, or even to give my own political opinions primarily, but to really use the experiences in this position to help facilitate a conversation around the issues you all care about, including those people or those issues that probably don't get as much attention as they should, but might actually be most prevalent in our minds. Because I happen to think that in this extraordinary last couple of years, it's really underlined some of our most basic and underreported issues. Between, of course, controversies and changes in government, the pandemic, response to that, racial developments, of course, the March 16th shootings here in Atlanta, immigration. There are so many things that have really impacted Americans, Asian Americans, and Filipino Americans. And I'll relate that to my background to really answer Christina's question. So some of you may know, but I think it's important because I think my background not only represents a lot of what my own constituents in my district here in Gwinnett experience, but also a portion, at least a portion of the Filipino American experience here in Georgia at all socioeconomic and political spectrums. So I am an immigrant to Atlanta. I came to the Philippines when I was 7 years old. This was 1991. I did grow up on numerous forms of public assistance along with my family. I wanted to give back and eventually became first a social worker and then a lawyer. And now I am a state representative of a district that's very interesting. It's a district that is over 50% immigrants, including about 13% Asian descent, which is well above the average in Georgia and nationally. And that includes, as you can imagine, many small business owners and entrepreneurs, in addition to, I think, some of the hardest working laborers you'll see in many essential industries. And hard work aside, though, it's also a district where about 25% of the people, even before COVID, were in poverty. And even though 80% of that segment that was in the workforce, i.e. the adults, were actually employed. So you can imagine how much COVID has made that worse. And it's really impacted people's basic ability to attain everything from income to housing, healthcare, food, health for small businesses, basic security. And I bring all that up because, again, it's reflective not only of my experiences and the district experiences, but I suspect a lot of at least a portion of the Filipino American experience has been. I will say it's been illuminating, but it's not surprising that the concerns that my pretty diverse and hardworking constituents come to me most about are not perhaps the most controversial issues of the day, whether that is the response to COVID, voting, immigration, police, things I mentioned, but they're about the things I mentioned earlier, but even more basic goods and services like access to broadband or waste management, water or childcare. Again, they don't tend to be the most politically charged concerns, but I think they're kind of underreported and they're very much about day-to-day survival, especially in these challenging circumstances. And I will say, even if you take some of those really prominent, kind of more charged issues and what those issues say about attitudes towards and experiences of Filipino Americans, I think you'll find if you dig deeper, those issues do reflect more basic, if still pretty complex concerns. I'll point to two examples. So if you take COVID, but you go beyond the conversations about vaccines and masks, think of the factors that don't get as much attention, but tend to explain why Filipino Americans have, it's been well reported, have borne a disproportionate brunt of the pandemic's toll. Our high representation in the field of healthcare labor, of course, our higher shares of multi-generational households mean there's a greater burden on some people, and our higher rates of underlying health conditions. So how do we respond to those factors as a community if we do? Or even think of what happened with March 16th. I know so much of that conversation was around, was it a hate crime? Was it a not hate crime? But I think it not only speaks to a more basic issue of whether people feel safe and what practical steps we need to take, but I think it also speaks to just issues about, I will honestly say, not only issues towards Asian Americans as a whole, but the difficult plight, again, of hardworking immigrant labor. I want to say that because that characterizes the most impacted people in that tragedy. And those were several of the women who were actually killed, who were immigrants that were working in very difficult circumstances. So that's certainly an issue that's prevalent within the Filipino American community long before any tragedy and will be long after. So that's how I really wanted to start, not only to introduce myself, but hopefully to center the town hall. I know for many Filipino Americans here, you might not be front and center at every event or in public, but you have very real concerns. And again, some of those concerns may not be those that are most conspicuous. So I really want to hear that. And I hope during today's town hall, we can make and have room for all of those concerns, because it really reflects, again, the diversity of the Filipino American experience. And I'm just one of those stories. So I look forward to the conversation.
Thank you so much, and for sharing more about what you're experiencing, what you're seeing, what you're hearing from our constituents, and also the fact that you're listening. So you are making all of us feel really seen and heard. So thank you for that. And also, it's great to get to know more about you. So as we get into the town hall, let's dive into the questions. Audience, feel free to raise your hand in the Zoom or go ahead and type your question in the chat and I'll call on you. But we do already have one question from Len. Len is asking, the biggest hurdle I think in our community is getting Filipinos involved in political activism here and raising funds to support politicians. The ones who volunteered recently in getting the vote out, that's been great. And the presence of you, Representative Lim, is a big step. But how do you think the community can help change that?
Absolutely. I think at the end of the day, it comes down to at least two things. One is better organizing, which is a challenge, particularly in the Filipino American community here, perhaps compared to other states, or I know you've spent some time up north, it's perhaps more diffuse. So it's harder to find people, but I know there's been great work and will continue to be great work to do that. And I think I will relate that to the second thing, which is I think listening, and particularly those that don't have, as I mentioned earlier in kind of the intro, those that don't have the things that we talk about all the time. And I think there are a lot of Filipino Americans again, sure, they will have opinions about any number of issues that we might wish to talk about, but they might wish to talk about sort of their own issues. And I think in my own experience, both within and certainly outside of the Filipino American community, I've found a lot more success precisely as you said, Christina, really listening to those concerns. I think a good way to put about it is, when I go canvass a door, most of these folks, even now, because, I don't meet most of the people in my district, they're strangers. So I could go about it one or two ways. One is I could tell them to do something, just introduce myself, tell them all of these things and kind of overwhelm them with information. But I really choose to take that more secondary approach, which is really listening to them. I find that if I'm doing most of the talking, as I would find in this town hall, I'm probably doing it wrong. And again, I think that's true of the Filipino Americans I've met who are not perhaps the most, again, prevalent or out there. And I think even with us coming here I know we had earlier the kind of the earliest folks here, early folks, we came kind of in the mid-wave, again, in 1991. And so we were trying to get my family situated within the community, and we found it at times overwhelming. But I found that those that have become our friends for many years have been those that just wanted to listen to us. So I would say better organizing, of which there are already many efforts, and really being committed to listening to people's concerns and not just, telling them what to be concerned about.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I love how you're really recommending that people get organized and involved so that their voice can be heard. So thank you. Any more questions? It sounds like we might have another one. What issues are you seeing being debated or brought up in Congress right now that you think the Phil-Am community should really pay attention to?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's one I kind of mentioned earlier, but there is a lot of conversation we know around infrastructure right now. And when I mentioned earlier that those are the types of concerns that people come to me kind of like on a daily basis with, that's certainly true of I have a few Filipino Americans in my area. So when it comes time to infrastructure for transportation or water or broadband or any number, again, childcare, I mentioned earlier, these are things that really impact people's day-to-day experiences. And certainly within the Filipino American community, certainly within the immigrant community in general. And I think that perhaps hasn't gotten as much attention. I know like the figures get thrown around of how much money, but I think it's kind of important to dig down, because I'll really relate it to the folks. There's so many, for example, Filipino American nonprofits, and there is this pot of money right now at various counties, but also at the state level, that I've been trying to get as many nonprofits in my district to apply to. And I found there are some nonprofits that didn't even know about this thing. The deadline is October 31st. This is that American Rescue Plan money that people are clamoring over. We're not debating over the money because that's already been allocated, and that is going to help so many nonprofits. So I think that's been such, again, even in my experience, has something that people haven't paid attention to. But when it comes down to it, we can debate all we want about rights and the law, but without kind of the money behind it, it's going to be very empty. So I would wish more people, especially in the Filipino American community, especially nonprofits serving these populations, would really take a look at that.
Okay, great. Yeah, so hopefully that answered Len's question, but thank you so much for, again, sharing your perspective there. So I'll take a pause if there are any more questions in the chat. Would also like to call on any of our fellow panelists and moderators if you want to take a look at the chat and see if there's any questions I might be missing. Okay, it looks like the chat is pretty clear. So I'll go ahead and get to a question that was submitted before this, if you don't mind. Could you share more about your thoughts on redistricting Georgia and how this will impact the Asian American community?
Yeah, that is one of the pretty controversial issues. So from the broad level perspective, it will absolutely impact people in the Filipino American community, whether or not they care about politics, because at the end of the day, we are drawing several maps. We're paying a lot of attention, or you probably may be paying the most attention to the congressional maps. We're also drawing the state maps. That is for state house and state senate. I'm part of the state house, but we're also redrawing local maps. So we're drawing the counties, and for example, their commissioners here in Gwinnett. There's debates about whether we should increase the number of commissioners because they might better represent, say, Asian populations, of which there's a huge population of APIs in Gwinnett. And that also extends to the school board. Those are also being redistricted, and they're the same questions that are being had about, do we want more seats potentially so that more APIs, Filipino Americans included, would be able to elect their candidates of choice. So when we were filling out, and the prevalent theme of various events, Phil-Am events last year, was the census. This is the result of that now, because we are now using the 2020 census results to redraw those maps. And it ultimately comes down to, again, will we as Filipino Americans be able to help elect, our candidates of choice as communities? And so I think everyone should certainly be paying attention. And again, not just to the congressional level, which has gotten a lot of attention, but again, you can imagine, based on what I've said, that I think a lot that really matters, that really impacts our day-to-day is happening locally. And I would want more people to pay attention to what's happening at the county, municipal, and school board level as well, because it will impact the Filipino American community, even if we're not paying attention.
Yeah, that's really great guidance there. So everyone that's listening to this now, really pay attention at the local level. That will really make a difference and make an impact. So thanks again, Representative Lim. We do
Christine,
have time for a few more questions.
Quickly.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I
Yeah,
forgot to say,
do.
so we as the General Assembly, we are going back into special session on November 3rd to consider congressional and state maps. So be paying attention to that. And then come January in a regular session, that's when we'll be considering the local maps. So there's a lot to pay attention to in the next few months.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Thanks for that clarification. And so, folks, please pay attention. Let's go ahead and take his advice there, and that will again make a great difference. So we do have room for a couple more questions. I'll take one more from the chat. This is another great one. How's your experience been like since being in office? Do you think you are making headway considering the partisan struggle?
Yes, I do. So one of my proudest accomplishments, so we'll forget the local for a second, but even at the state level, I pride myself, I grew up on Catholic social justice principles. Every person has dignity. So I work with anyone who has good faith. And through that, I'm a policy nerd. So I introduced 33 substantive bills and resolutions. And 12 of those got hearings, which is the most of any Democrat or Republican on my side. None of those have quite passed yet, which might be indicative of some of the partisanship, but I've been very well received. I've been appointed to a few special committees, including the rising cost of construction materials, which has basically become a committee on the supply chain crisis that has also been making the news. So I've been pretty successful, and I have high hopes of passing legislation. Of course, at the local level, I've already gotten some changes in our county ordinances as well. And I think a lot of my success has really been what I mentioned earlier, which is not only seeing the dignity in everyone, but really listening to folks and where they are coming from. If you're coming to me in good faith, even if you fully disagree on an issue, I will gladly have a conversation with you. One of the lobbyists was joking about me because apparently she was being asked like how I was getting all of these hearings, because it's a big deal to have a hearing. There are many folks that never get hearings on their bills. And she was telling them, Marvin is just nice. So I think at the end of the day, be kind above all. And I think even though it's difficult sometimes, even though there's people that you may wholly disagree with, I really try to remember that everyone has that value. And I think that served me well so far. You should do it anyway, but it also has some good consequences, I think.
Yeah, that's great. Well, it's very evident that you use the power of collaboration and you're able to really be purpose-driven so that you can find those commonalities and make progress, even though it's a bit split. So thank you for all the work that you're doing. Well, I am paying attention to time here, and so I know I've got to wrap it up, but I do have just another question in terms of our call to action. So what should our call to action be as members of the community to become better participants of our government and to help promote your efforts? And what is your hope for the next generation?
Yeah, so that seems like a two-parter. So the first part, I think the call to action, other than what I said earlier, to really be paying attention to redistricting, and of course to just pay attention to what's happening in that regular session, because that is going far beyond redistricting. That's going to consider so many of the things that do make the news and that might be that you might care about. I think is to really just continue to, here's the way I'll put it. What I would like to see more is really even increased, and again, there's been great efforts toward this, but increased collaborations among a lot of the groups that already exist with some of the other groups, because we're talking about the Philam community here. But even when I talk to some of the other groups, whether that's Korean American or Vietnamese American, Chinese American, again, across the political spectrum, they as a whole do seem more diffuse when compared to, say, African American or Black Americans or Latino American groups. From, again, just my vantage point, they seem a little bit more able to, I think they have less of the diffuseness problem. They probably have greater strengths in numbers, but I think that's why we as Asian Americans need to unite even more so with some of the other Asian American groups. And it can be hard. You're not always going to agree. But I think where we have seen that agreement, and we've seen that in this year more than ever, given what's happened, I think we've already seen the strength of the community. So that would be the call to action. And then with the younger generation, it was interesting. Just less than 2 weeks ago, I was over at UGA presenting to their Philam Students Association, and it was the largest and most active Filipino Students Association I had ever seen. There were about 50 people there, and they were very active. They seemed very active, not just coming to meetings, but they had all sorts of activities. But they told me that that was not, even 3 years ago, that wasn't the case. It really took one or two people to really organize that. And they brought even people outside of the Philam community that then helped bring more UGA students that were Filipino American into their group. So that's a little bit of an example of what I said of really going outside our groups where we think it might make a difference. But as a whole, I do see a lot of hope, because I'll close with this. I had lunch with some of the Philam leaders just a couple of months ago. It was because of the resolution that I'd introduced for the Greater Philam Association of Atlanta. And I was very candid about asking, what do you see about the next generation? And except for one or two exceptions, people were saying, we don't necessarily see folks in the next generation, carrying on our values, traditions, even that sense of identity. But I can report based on that meeting that if work is done, there are many people because those are, to be clear, I'm millennial, those are Gen Zs that were very, very active. So given some work, there's a lot of energy, and I see a lot of hope for that younger generation to continue on our identities.
Excellent. No, I love that you talk to those students and you can see the power of the community, even with Gen Z. As a millennial, I feel really old that we're talking about Gen Z. But
I felt very old that day, Christina.
I know. Yeah, but I remember just even when we were kind of, at that age and thinking about, the power of our voice and the power of community. And I love to hear that it's still going strong and you're seeing a lot of hope still left in, even the younger generations. So thank you for sharing your perspectives. It looks like we do have one more question. So Arho, I'll let you ask the last question before we wrap up.
Thank you. Attorney Marvin Lim, you're the first one in the community to have gotten in that level. So we appreciate and thank you for that one. Now, how can your representation be a source of strength, a source of pride, that no matter whatever political parties each of the Filipino Americans are leaning towards, or whatever their political views are, that your representation as the start is not going to be the end, especially for the younger and next generations. You have stressed a very important factor on redistricting, but so many people really don't understand that. I'm just beginning to get that now, because here in Cobb County, I'm getting engaged with our county level civic engagements, and I'm getting email about this redistricting. But I don't know, how are we able to leverage the use of social media platforms, or are you able to share that in town halls, even understanding? Because before taking action, how can you take an action if you don't understand about it in the first place? Beyond the noise, let's forget our political affiliations. Talk about why it matters to you, no matter no matter where you are on this issue. And then your representation, especially for the younger generations, as I'm seeing in the other Asian American communities, the younger generations are really engaged politically, and we hope that representation, no matter what party you are leaning to, representation matters in civic engagement, in your town hall, as you said, in the school board, because everything that is local politics has something to do with it, and you have stressed that so right in a way. So how, in your position now, how are you able to encourage broad age and especially the younger generations?
Yeah, I think the best way to do it is to really make it relevant to them, because you're absolutely right. Redistricting is a process that you might understand generally what's going on, but you might not know the specific processes because it can get very complicated. But I find that if you start by talking about what redistricting is rather than why it matters, and you picked up on what I said, it matters even at the local level. I will say, when I was canvassing for my own position, there were so many people that didn't know what a state representative did. But then, so I started talking to them about police here because there was a sheriff's race. I started talking about school board because most of the people I talked to ended up having kids, and most of them were in our Gwinnett County Public Schools. So that made it really relevant to them. So I would say the best way to leverage it, no matter your political affiliation, no matter your age, is to find the thing that really matters to them and then relate it to the process of redistricting. And that's why I wanted to take care to say, it's not just about what's happening in Congress, because to some of us that feels so broad and like, will it make a difference? But it will make a difference, certainly at the most local levels. And as I said at the very beginning, that tends to be what people most care about. So I try to do that in my own role, because again, that's completely nonpartisan, to cut through and try to determine what matters to someone else. And I will continue to do that. And I hope others, as they talk not just about redistricting, but our governmental processes in general, because I know many people are just turned off by government in general. I think making it relevant to what they really care about, which first requires figuring out what they care about, is the most important thing we can do to leverage ourselves as Filipino Americans, as citizens of this great country.
Thank you.
Great. Wow, I'm so inspired. Thank you, Arho, for that question. And Representative Lim, thank you so much for your passion, your knowledge, experience, and most importantly, your care. I feel very empowered to take action because of just even the last, 30 minutes that we spent together. So thank you for your time. Audience, thank you for your questions. I hope you all felt like it was time well spent, and I appreciate also the opportunity to be able to moderate this very important conversation with Representative Lim. So thank you. And with that, I'll turn it back over to our leaders here. So Jane,
thank
Tony.
you, Christina. Thank you so much. And thank you, Marvin, for that very insightful town hall meeting. I'm sure that we have more questions out there, but in the interest of time, like I said early on, people can send us in their questions. And like I always said about the panel, we do need a separate 2 hours for a town hall meeting, because this is like, we call it mini. But again, thank you very much. I do want to know if Father Natad is still online. Father, are you still there? Thank you. The question is, what is the importance of celebrating the 500-year anniversary of Christianity?
All right, thanks for the question. I think that is a very important and relevant question, especially this year, because we are celebrating the 500 years Christianity in the Philippines. And I think this is an important event of the faith lives of Filipino Catholic, knowing that we're the only Catholic country in Asia. And it is really a celebration of the gift of faith, the gift of hope and love. And in that way, we can be able to appreciate what faith brought to us as a Filipino. It shapes our culture, it shapes our way of life. In fact, some of our civil laws are being influenced by our faith. We are the only country that doesn't have divorce and abortion, and that's part of the Catholic teaching. And also it develops as well our family values. And that's why when you think about it, Filipinos are very religious in nature, because almost every home has an altar or image of, religious images. And then it also brings togetherness, to us as a one Catholic country that really shape as well in how are we going to care one another, to love one another. And that beautiful tradition that we have, the Bayanihan, is more about from the fruits of our faith as well. And I think it's a good way to celebrate and thank God for all this wonderful gift of faith that really brings us together and shape us together, who we are as Filipinos, as a human being, as a loving person, as a person that we become a good, faithful citizens to our country. I think I would like to share that to you.
Thank you so much, Father. That was a very inspiring answer, and that is so true. And I also want to thank Willie Blanco, who fielded that question to Father Natad. At this point, I would like to turn it back over to Tony for another cultural presentation.
everyone. My name is Nikita Trivedi, and I am the Community Relations Director for NAP Atlanta. NAP Atlanta is proud to be supporting Gailing Foundation in helping further its mission of enriching cultural diversity, developing foundation literacy through educational resources, and helping build civic and community leaders. We are proud to be supporting the annual Filipino Heritage Month celebration through various cultural events as well as speaker series. NAP Atlanta, just like Gailing Foundation, is a volunteer-run nonprofit driven by passionate leaders who shared a commitment towards building community and cultivating leaders. Events like this, the Filipino Heritage Month celebration, give us a great opportunity to come together as a community and celebrate the many accomplishments and contributions of Filipinos, not only to our great state of Georgia, but also to the country. We wish you very luck with your events and activities. Thank you.
Afternoon. Through the modern U.S. history, Filipino immigrants to America have easily assimilated to the mainstream society and achieved their American dreams through their own individual merits. The proliferation of various social and regional Phil-Am organizations is also testament that togetherness and oneness is not necessarily on top of their list. With this in mind, Honorary Consul General Ray Donato started a tradition in 2007 to celebrate the anniversary of Philippine independence on the day of June 12 itself, to allow the Filipino community of Georgia to celebrate and declare our Philippine heritage as one Filipino community, even for just one day in a year. Thus, Makabayan Georgia Incorporated was founded in 2008 to support and promote this tradition. In the process, form a cohesive network of various Phil-Am organizations here in Georgia. The cohesiveness of this network was first put to test in late November 2013 when Makabayan launched a fundraising campaign in the aftermath of Typhoon Haiyan. Filipinos and friends in Georgia raised $75,000 in 1 month, which resulted in helping repair a damaged hospital, provided livelihood grants to 25 families, installed a drinking water biofilter in 2 elementary schools, and distributed rice to thousands of typhoon victims in Tacloban. The MGI Caring is Sharing project distributes monetary grants to various Phil-Am organizations in Georgia, including Galing Foundation, to support their education campaign in the Philippines, and the Philippine American Women's Association of Georgia to support their campaign in helping abused women in Georgia. This ongoing pandemic has presented a different challenge in 2020, when hundreds of young Filipino J1 interns were stranded in different parts of the U.S., with no income to pay for their rent and their individual needs when their host hotels stopped operation due to the mandated lockdowns. In collaboration with the Office of ACG Ray Donato, MGI formed a COVID-19 task force under the able leadership of CEO Emeritus Willie Bonus, specifically to help the J1 interns and other Filipinos in Georgia who were negatively impacted by this pandemic. This task force raised thousands of dollars, enough to provide rental money for at least 2 months, money for their daily food and other necessities, and ticket fares to get them back home to their families in the Philippines. The task force also rallied Phil-Am community to deliver hot home-cooked meals to dozens of J1 interns and OFWs for several weeks. Indeed, great things happen when we band together. For together, we thrive. Mabuhay ang Pilipinas.